Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy Friday. It's right at the top of the hour by my clock. This is David Herring from NOAA's Climate Program Office, and we're just going to stand by for another minute or so. We had quite a few more registrants than have arrived, so we'll give folks another minute or so to arrive. But thank you, and please stand by. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello and welcome. My name is David Herring, and I am the Communication, Education, and Engagement Division Chief located within NOAA's Climate Program Office. And I want to welcome and greet everyone to the Climate Smart Communities Initiative competition webinar. I'm joined here by my colleagues in the Climate Program Office, Ned Gardiner and Luann Dahlman, who have helped me pull together this slide set and helped me to author the portion of the NOFO and the information sheet on the Climate Smart Communities Initiative. And so we're very pleased that you all could join us here today and that we have the opportunity to share with you this exciting new competition. With respect to today's session, we're going to spend a little bit of time giving an overview about the competition in three categories. Before I dive in, I want to make the point that today's session is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on the CPO NOFO webpage as early as Monday of next week, maybe no later than Tuesday. So if you want to come back and re-review what gets discussed here, or if you want to share this information with a friend or a colleague, you could direct them there and they would be able to also see this recorded presentation, and we hope to also make available the copy. We will make available the copy of this slide set as well for download. So in addition to the NOFO itself and the program information sheet about the Climate Smart Communities Initiative, this slide set and the recording of this session will be made available on the CPO website. If anyone has questions during the course of this presentation, you're invited to use the questions section of the control panel. There's a GoToWebinar control panel. On my screen, it appears in the upper right. You may need to go to your menu or to expand that, but we'll be monitoring the questions section of the control panel. And I will be going through a presentation pretty quickly in its entirety, and then we will double back and entertain anyone's questions. When we get to that point, I'll address the questions, but you will be enabled and invited to unmute yourself if you want to probe in or ask more or ask follow-up questions. So there will be opportunity for discussion. So I'm hopeful that I can get through the presentation in under 30 minutes. And then the remaining balance of the time for questions and discussion. So with that, why don't we dive in? In today's agenda, I'm going to first give a high-level description of the initiative itself, and then we'll talk a little bit about the grant itself and how folks can apply. What are some of the characteristics that we envision of a successful proposal and team? And ultimately, where's this all going? What's the future that we envision? And then we'll move into sort of an open Q&A. There are some uniquenesses and some nuances with respect to the Climate Smart Communities Initiative that may make this a little bit different from some of the other typical competitions that have been hosted out of the Climate Program Office. So we wanted to be able to have a conversation because we felt just reading this information on an info sheet might not be sufficient, and it would really help people to understand and metabolize to be able to hear and talk about some of the nuances of this particular project. So with that, why don't we move in? I don't think I need to explain to this group, but just by way of setting the table to call attention to a fact that I think we all know very well is, first of all, we have a growing economy all across our nation and growing communities, especially in our urban and peri-urban regions of the economy. So we have many more people living and building and working and playing in harm's way. And yet, so not coincidentally, we also see, or at the same time, we do see a dramatic increase over the last 4 decades in, for example, the number of billion-dollar disasters that are occurring, as well as the combined total damages in billion-dollar disasters. This is an annual report that's produced and published by NOAA. And since the decade of the 1980s, the decadal annual average number and combined annual costs of billion-dollar disasters in the United States has quadrupled. And so we see that it's not just a function of more people building and living in harm's way, but that there are climatic changes ongoing. Warmer atmosphere holds more water vapor. There are more and widespread and more severe heat waves. There's a wider occurrence of wildfire and so forth. And so what we see and understand is that there is increasing risk in communities all across the country, and this is showing up in their risk, in their financial risk, and in terms of risk management of assets, in terms of protecting people's health and well-being, and in terms of financial risk. And so the idea is, what are we doing to address this increasing risk, and what can be done? And so that's specifically what this project is aiming to address. So this next slide is posing the question, when will resilience building catch up with climate change? And so if we consider this conceptual chart that the pace of change is the y-axis, and over time, we can see that climate risk has been going up, probably not at a linear rate as represented here, but this is more conceptually representing that there has been a dramatic increase with each passing decade in climate risk. And so we also recognize that with respect to the response that's been ongoing in communities across the nation, that the pace and the scale of resilience building across the nation has not been keeping pace with the increase in risk. And so the impetus for this program is that we would make a new change. We would initiate this new initiative that would be able to bend that curve of the pace and the scale of local resilience planning, so that hopefully we can match and then maybe even begin to exceed the pace of the real world occurrence of extreme events that have been occurring, and these disasters that have been occurring. So we must greatly accelerate the pace of planning and adaptation to climate-related hazards. And what we're proposing to do is to launch this initiative that would do so. So here's one of the main takeaways from today's presentation. We're pleased to introduce the Climate Smart Communities Initiative, which is a new cooperative agreement designed to scale up and accelerate the pace of resilience planning equitably and inclusively in hundreds of communities across the nation, while reducing the cost of doing so. And emphasize the word communities here. In the scope of this particular project, we're defining that as any local government entity. It can be municipal, county, tribal. There can be regional councils of governments, or even a local state government entity, but emphasis is on resilience planning in locations, not say a statewide plan, but particularly focusing in on at community scale resilience planning. So this is a recognition that today we don't have a national climate service. Today we don't have a national climate adaptation strategy, and yet increasingly over the last 5 to 10 years or so, in that space, we have seen lots of actors in all domains of academia, commercial entities, nonprofits, and certainly federal and local and state and tribal government entities moving into this space to begin to confront and address the climate challenge. And so there have been lots of successes, lots of noteworthy progress that's been made in the climate adaptation and resilience building field in the last 5 to 10 years or so. And so what this initiative is aiming to do is to make an investment in this space that captures, leverages, and utilizes what is proving successful in ways that can snap together into a newer and greater whole that helps us to achieve that scaled up and accelerated pace for resilience building. Next slide. This, of course, has been the main substance of our deliberations in these periodic resilience ecosystem workshops that we have held. NOAA working with its partners in EcoAdapt and the Climate Resilience Fund and other important partners that we have been working with over the years. We have come together and recognized that there are lots of entities and expertise working in this space. And so we have together developed a theory of change, and we have recognized that there are lots of areas where we're stronger together than as these disconnected entities. And so part of the impetus then of this particular initiative, the Climate Smart Communities Initiative, is an extension of that spirit and that esprit de corps, which is to say we want to be investing in this space in ways that are generating work and revenue for climate adaptation practitioners in ways that are also helping the nation begin to move out at a much wider scale and at a much faster pace in terms of confronting the climate hazards that we face in our communities all across the nation. So in short, it's recognizing that we are now in an all hands on deck situation. And so it's an effort to incentivize a collaborative and very focused approach to helping us address this challenge together. So we're anticipating that these grant-funded projects that we have funded, that we're currently in the process of funding through the resilience ecosystem, will bear fruit in the next 6 or 7 months. And I'll say a little bit more about that in just a moment. And so the idea is that we will take and leverage and use a lot of the investments and the outcomes from some of the grant-funded projects in the resilience ecosystem to also help support this Climate Smart Communities initiative. So brings us to the next question in terms of who is eligible, who should apply. I want to make the point that we are seeking a single entity to manage the Climate Smart Communities Initiative project. Earlier I did note that we're aiming and hoping that over a span of years, we will be getting to the point where we're able to support hundreds of communities in a relatively concurrent fashion all across the nation. And so there may be, but we're not aware of any single entity that would have a small army large enough to be able to support such a highly concurrent project. So we're making the assumption that the awardee will have to either partner or will have to make sub-awards for the various elements of this project. And this being a cooperative agreement that the awardee will be working very closely with NOAA, specifically with our climate resilience team, toolkit team, and some of the other teams sponsored through the Climate Program Office and other parts of NOAA, as well as a soon-to-be formed CSCI advisory group. Now, I want to just quickly amend, if we can go back one slide though, I want to just quickly amend when I say we seek a single entity to manage the CSCI project. I want to caveat that by saying there are two approaches that we envision. There can be partnerships that are listed as co-Is, where there may be equal partners listed in the proposal as co-Is, and they may be in different entities. It could be structured that way. Or you could have a single entity that is the prime, and then they could identify a number of other entities that will be treated as sub-awards, or it could be both and. So I hope that was clear. Next slide. Oh, I see. And so that is addressed in the next slide. Thanks for breaking that out, Luann. So just a restatement of what I just said. You can work together as co-investigators, and then budget can be awarded to specific entities who are working on specific subsets of the project if they are listed as co-Is, or there could be one primary awardee and then any number of sub-awardees, and that could be done as well. We have received a question from a number of interested persons out there in the resilience ecosystem wondering, should we reach out to some potential partners to discuss ideas, whether we may not want to be a partner or a primary, but we may like to be considered as a sub-awardee. We have ideas, we have suggestions, and the answer is yes. We encourage folks to, if you have contributions, to reach out to colleagues in the resilience ecosystem space, alert them to your thoughts and your ideas. We're not planning to facilitate that actively beyond this webinar, but we do think it's a good idea and we encourage that. Next slide. We are encouraging in the fabric of your proposal that you would name who are your co-investigators or your primary partners. If you have some specific partners or sub-awardees who are essential to your success, then you will probably want to take some time to introduce who they are, what are their qualifications or capabilities or the strengths or advantages that they're bringing to the table. However, it occurred to me that some of you might be thinking, well, if they're going to be serving as many as 100 communities in a single year, are we expected to have in our proposal a list of 100 adaptation practitioners or some large number? And the answer there is no. We're not in the initial proposal, you're not expected to list like who would be everyone who's working with you on this project, but rather that you demonstrate that you have experience in adaptation services, provide evidence that you are a recognized and connected entity in this space, and that you understand what would be the requisite characteristics and qualifications of an adaptation practitioner, who would be the type of individual or entity that you would be bringing on as a partner or as a sub-awardee. And then with some indication of how you would plan to manage and coordinate the various actors that would be working with you in completing this work. So I hope that was clear. That then brings me now to the very specifics about the Climate Smart Communities Initiative. There are essentially three main tasks that are going to be addressed in this project. First is we're going to be providing training to adaptation practitioners. The idea is that we want to leverage and use the Climate Resilience Toolkit's Steps to Resilience and associated tools and data and resources and expertise that have proven successful at helping communities to understand their exposure and their risks with respect to climate-related hazards and how to move through the sequence of steps in preparing a finance-ready resilience plan. So a main element then is to be able to provide the training that will be needed for all of the practitioners who are going to be selected to then be paired with communities to work with those communities to develop climate resilience plans. Of course, the selected awardee will also have to have a demonstrated capability and summarize how they're planning to manage this project, all the way from planning through implementation. And then to be able to monitor performance over time, to stay engaged with the practitioners and with the communities over time, and to make sure that we're able to coordinate and address and keep things on track and make improvements writ large in terms of the state of the art and the state of science in resilience planning. I should say here that we recognize that we're not thinking in terms of we're just going to work with these communities and give them a plan at the end of the day and then see you later, good luck, hope it works out. But that there should also be some thoughts for how are we sustaining a relationship over time and where might things go in the future. I'll say a little bit more about that later in this presentation. Next slide. So with respect to the training for practitioners, here is a schematic on the right-hand side, just summarizing and characterizing the Climate Resilience Toolkit's Steps to Resilience framework. And so this is a proven framework and methodology that has been being used by practitioners and municipal governments and regional councils of governments in the United States. And so there's now a success record to draw upon. So what we're looking to do then is to begin to develop a more codified training and guidebook so that we can make sure that as the adaptation practitioners are working through this project, that there is a consistency across the board. We recognize, of course, that each location is going to have unique challenges, unique situations in terms of their local population and their infrastructure. What are the hazards they're confronting? What do they see as their main risks and so forth? But at the same time, and we have to be able to accommodate those uniquenesses, of course, but at the same time, we're envisioning and expecting that there will be sort of a consistency in terms of the approach that we're using. And in terms of being able to incorporate the best practices from across the field to help guide and inform how this is done. And so we want to make sure that each practitioner that's chosen to work with the communities will have connection back to the awardee and to the larger community that we're going to stay engaged with to make sure that they're not working sort of isolated or independent, but they have the ability to receive information, receive guidance from the larger community in terms of both from NOAA and from the entity that's selected as the awardee. So in other words, we will be supporting these practitioners' progress along the way as they're facilitating inclusive community engagements using the steps to resilience to develop local resilience plans. Next slide. So there are several elements of the training package that are already being developed and are already being planned. So we have work underway now for a practitioner's guide for climate service professionals. This is being based on the toolkit's steps to resilience. We are planning to include, and this was a focus in the Climate Resilience Fund's recent CCRE grant competition, modules that will augment the steps to resilience for focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. A part of the training also to include, where practicable, focus on the use of nature-based solutions. We want to also characterize, because this is something that we heard pretty clearly in last year's Resilience Ecosystem Workshop, that one of the big gaps in adaptation planning is once a plan is made, how do we go about getting funds to get to implementation? And so we want to be able to work with partners such as FEMA and other grant funding entities to characterize what are the key characteristics of a winning proposal to make sure that we're folding that in and mainstreaming it in the development of these plans so that we're optimizing chances of success for getting funding or financing to be able to move from planning to implementation. And then, of course, how are we defining and measuring success and tracking the results over time? And that's just both so that we can report on the performance and the results of this project, but also so that we can support knowledge sharing writ large across this community for the benefit of all who are operating in the climate resilience and adaptation space. And so we're certainly planning to include that type of information, a knowledge sharing platform in the Climate Resilience Toolkit, but others can also will be able to have and host and use this information. So in short, we're just hoping to sort of enrich and help move the field forward in a way that's both benefiting the practitioners in this space, but also helping our nation move forward more quickly. So the point here is that these are already developing and emerging building blocks that we're envisioning can be taken and used, but obviously NOAA and the awardee will evaluate these building blocks to determine their appropriateness and their readiness for use in this project. The point is we want to try to help folks not have to be starting at square zero, but to the extent we can, that we're already moving forward and getting closer to being ready to hit the ground running. Next slide. So again, the awardee will be expected to manage this project and the implementation. That includes recruitment and engaging with the service practitioners in these training cohorts that will be planned and conducted. We will also be putting out a call for communities and an application process for communities. We recognize that in many communities, they're not yet ready to talk about climate resilience. They may consider that they have more urgent or upstream problems that can pertain to, say, social justice matters or race relation matters, or crime, or there may be any number of other issues that are more urgent. So what we would be doing is screening for what are those communities that are now ready to turn their attention to climate resilience planning and building. And there would be a number of criteria. So there will be this application process that the awardee would manage, and of course NOAA would be working with the entity to do that. And then once the communities are selected, we will also screen applications and select who will be the adaptation practitioners. And then I want to make it clear that the funding that we're offering would actually be going to the adaptation practitioners, and the awardee would be pairing the practitioners together with the communities that are chosen. But the funding would not be going to the community. The funding would be going to the adaptation practitioner. And the expectation is that the community will also make available an in-kind contribution, as it were, of their staff time. So who would be the relevant government people and entities or offices in that local community who would come to the table and that we would be working with, so as to ensure that they're invested in this process, that they have skin in the game, and a sense of ownership of the outputs and outcomes from this process. But I just wanted to make it clear that the funding is going to the awardee and to the adaptation practitioner. I hope that was clear. Moving on to the next slide, in terms of the project implementation as well, we want to make sure that through inclusive engagements, that the communities and the practitioners are co-developing quantitative vulnerability and risk assessments. This would be through the steps to resilience, that the local action plans are equitable with clearly identified priorities, and that that they're optimized with clear foci and ready and able to obtain funding through various pathways and so forth, and that ultimately that these are enhancing the community's capacity to support decisions. So the point is that we want to leave them with more than a plan on the shelf, that we're working with them to get to a point of getting funding dollars that are helping them move all the way to implementation. If communities are interested in going further in terms of having specialty deliverables made, let's say that a particular community is interested in a downscaled hydrology model or some other particular service that may be above and beyond this, they would still have the opportunity to work with the practitioner or others in the resilience ecosystem to provide additional services that could augment this process. So they may want or have a need for additional services, but the point of this project is to lead them through the planning process. But there is opportunity for them to extend the relationship with the practitioner, or to bring in other service providers for other services that they may want to complement or to extend this service, if that would be of interest. And then I guess, again, the third main deliverable, if you will, or task set rather, in this project is overall just monitor and improve the resilience planning processes. So part of the point here is to help us all together advance the field of climate adaptation. So by having reporting metrics and mechanisms that help us begin to evaluate what are the outcomes that we're observing, how is this going, where can improvements being made, and so on and so forth. Can we identify and systematize the best practices and sort of co-develop and evolve this database of what's working, what is optimal, what are some of the best strategies as a function of different asset or hazard types and so forth, to be able to provide monitoring evaluation, to come together periodically and to manage these dialogues, that we're able to reflect on the innovations of what's working in these different locations and to be able to share that knowledge across other parts of the country. And then maybe down the road to be able to produce new targeted solicitations through the climate resilience ecosystem if there are new solutions that are needed or new innovations that are needed, new methods or technologies or techniques to advance the field. So overall, we're hoping that this is helping to advance and enrich the field. I would like to say a few words now about the C division and the Climate Smart Communities Initiative competition specifically. Just about the competition, it's a 4-year cooperative agreement. And so similar to other grants, the awardee is going to receive funding to carry out the tasks as summarized in the NOFO, as summarized here in this presentation in the information sheet. But because this is a cooperative agreement, it comes with a built-in partnership, specifically with the Climate Resilience Toolkit team here in NOAA and some of our other partners here in NOAA and other partners that we may bring to the table through the larger federal family. And there's information here at the bottom of this slide, which is sort of summarizing what a cooperative agreement is. But the point here is that we're working together collaboratively on this project, and a link is provided if you want to read more. We did consider other mechanisms, but in short, we felt that a competition this way was perhaps the best path to be open and to be inclusive. There are other pathways we could have pursued and other mechanisms we could have pursued, but after our evaluation, we felt like that this was going to be the fastest path to getting us to all the way to beginning work. So I wanted to call attention to one reality that we are faced with, which is here we are in the midst of fiscal year 21. This is a fiscal year 22 project. We don't have our fiscal year 22 budget in hand, and we don't yet exactly know what the budget is going to be. You all may have access to the president's budget. The House mark has come out, and it does specifically mention the Climate Smart Communities Initiative as well as other programs within NOAA. So I'll say I'm optimistic, and I have, I would say high confidence that there is going to be funding. And so, but on the other hand, we don't know exactly what that funding level is going to be until we get that funding. So what we have written into the NOFO is that we're anticipating $4 million for the first year. And then in years 2 through 4, scoped at the $10 to $15 million per year range. So what I would like to advise you to do, or an approach that I'd like to advise you to consider, recognizing that there is still some budget uncertainty, is that you focus on the dollar amounts that are stated in the NOFO. And so if you need to prepare a budget table, or if you're going to sort of give some sort of cost breakdown on the work to be performed and your cost estimates for that work, then go ahead and work with the numbers as stated in the NOFO. But then you might either include a paragraph or another budget table that indicates how you might flex if the number is a bit above or a bit below that amount. There might be some aspects of how you conceive of the project that could be expanded if there was an increase in those funds, or how that could be reduced if there was a decrease in those funds over that amount. What we would envision will happen is once we know the amount and once a competition winner is selected, we would engage with that entity or those entities if it's a partnership, and we would then at that time disclose what the final budget actually turns out to be, and then there would be a negotiation or a discussion of here's the budget reality, and we would come to an understanding of what's the final proposed budget amount at that, what's the budget at that amount, is that acceptable, and then how would we move forward based on that. So that's how that part would go. I hope that was clear. Moving on to eligibility. All US-based institutions of higher learning or nonprofits and commercial organizations are eligible to compete. Cost sharing or cost matching is not required, though it is permitted. And I do note that because if there is, say, an in-kind contribution that the proposer is offering, or if the proposer does have some matching funds, that can be noted in the proposal, and it would, there may be ways where that allows you therefore to get more bang for the buck, quote unquote, in some sort of performance or deliverables or what have you. And so that can be noted, and that would be something that could be weighed in favor of the proposer. So noting that applicants must have a DUNS number. Want to emphasize and underscore that. And if you intend to apply, then you should check right away to see that you have one and that it is up to date. I have seen in years past where someone thought they had one and then right at the 11th hour discovered that it had expired and they weren't aware that it expired, and they tried to get one day prior to the deadline, and unfortunately it did not work out. And then they just emailed me the proposal and I could not accept it because they didn't have a DUNS number. I don't think you can submit a proposal to grants.gov without that number. So in short, please take the time early to make sure that you have that. And a question was submitted to us before the workshop. There was someone who is already a grant recipient under the resilience ecosystem through one of our resilience ecosystem workshop grants. And the question is, are they eligible to also compete here? And the answer is yes. All current and previous years resilience ecosystem grant recipients are eligible for this competition. Next slide. Regarding letters of intent, they're not required, but they are strongly encouraged, and it's mainly to help you kind of verify and validate if you're sort of interpreting this correctly and on the right path. You may still propose without a letter of intent. The letters of intent are due by 5 o'clock on Monday, August 9th. You would email your LOI to me at that email address that's given. If I receive an LOI from you on time, I will provide feedback to all submitters no later than September 6th, in which I will either encourage or discourage you from submitting a proposal based on the contents of your LOI. And my remarks will have more to do with my interpretation of what you say in the LOI. It's mainly to signal to you if I think it's your thoughts are being responsive to this particular competition or not. I will offer some thoughts or feedback, as to what you might consider doing, to make it more responsive. But of course, you're free to do as you wish. You may still submit, even if I discourage you from submitting. You're still certainly free to submit. Next slide. So with respect to the full proposals, if we can advance to the full proposal slide, they must be submitted through grants.gov. You will need to register to obtain a user ID and a password for grants.gov. And I actually personally have not gone through that process, but I'm told it can take some time, up to 4 weeks. So you're going to want to make sure you get on that early as well, so that there's no sort of last minute glitch on that. This information is also described on pages 15 to 21 in the NOFO, so you should have some more reference information there. If this is new to you, I do encourage you to read and follow the instructions carefully. And if you're having technical difficulties or there's something that's not making sense to you, you could email me. And if I don't know the answer right away, I can go out and seek and get the answers for you. In terms of timing, the proposals are due by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on October 18th, 2021. Our thinking and our goal is to stand up a review panel to evaluate and score all proposals and select an awardee before the end of the calendar year. That would go into an internal to NOAA review process first before we contacted the awardee, and just making sure that we have the budget and that everything is approved through our accounts management division, and our legal affairs. But the hope is that if everything is approved and the budget is in place and so forth, that that the paperwork could be processed and we could theoretically be at a position of making an award and moving forward on this project, say by the end of March or shortly thereafter. That's a bit of an aggressive timeline, but that's just kind of a ballpark figure. And so the hope would be, getting started as early as May or June. And the NOFO states that the start date of September 1st, that's a much more conservative number, but that kind of helps to give you a range. We're looking to get started as early as we can, which would probably be in the late spring, but it could be as late summer of 22 when we actually get started. Just to say a few words now about what are the characteristics that we envision of a successful proposal. We're looking for convincing evidence that the team that is being proposed understands and is experienced in climate adaptation, as well as project management of a large and complex project enterprise such as this, and that they understand how to move from planning to implementation and coordination of a project of this nature. We're looking for an entity that understands and values the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and is able to put these values at the center and keep it there throughout the life cycle of this project, and making sure that the outcomes at the local scale are equitable and inclusive. We also are looking for a partner that shows that they're willing and able to take and use existing tools. This is a particular project that's not about specifically new innovation, new results, new methodology, but taking things that are proving successful and snapping them together and or taking them to scale. And so we don't want to invent or reinvent, but rather leverage and use as best we can. A lot of the focus here is on relationship building and maintaining relationships not only with the communities that we're serving, but among one another in the climate adaptation space. That this is about sharing knowledge. This is about helping to grow and advance and evolve this field in ways that are not only helping our nation take action, but also I see it also as an investment in our nation's workforce and an investment in our nation's capacity building to do this work and to understand and to characterize what is best practice in this work, in this field. Next slide. We're looking for an entity that demonstrates understanding that collaborative science requires relationship building and trust building. And that's not something we take lightly. That has always been front and center in our success criteria for Climategov and the Climate Resilience Toolkit is trust in our partnerships and among the publics that we serve. Also mentioning the toolkit, that we're considering the steps to resilience as the framework that we want everyone to be committed to using. We recognize that there are lots of frameworks and that lots of different entities have been using different variations on that. One of the things that we're aiming to achieve, though, is a consistency in how we talk about, how we characterize our work, and writ large. If we think, fast forward years into the future, if we want to look across the national landscape and share and compare results in all of these communities that we've been serving, we want to be able to speak a consistent language and have a consistent terminology. And so we think that the steps to resilience is a great framework. It doesn't preclude the use of other frameworks, but the point is we are using this one. in terms of how we're moving forward in the execution of this project. And so we're expecting the proposals to acknowledge that framework, and that there's a broad awareness of the people and the processes and the capabilities that exist and are emerging in the field of climate adaptation. Next slide. As described in the NOFO, these are the criteria for scoring proposals to this competition. They will be weighted as follows. We're going to be considering the importance, the relevance, and the applicability of the proposed process in terms of the partnerships and the entities that are proposing. What are the overall qualifications of the applicants? In terms of the approach that's being taken in the proposal, what is the basis of its technical and scientific merit? And then what is the cost structure that they're proposing? And then folded into that cost structure would be if there are in-kind contributions as well, or ways of extending or getting more bang for the buck to help bring costs down, and therefore to be able to have more output. So that's just a summary review of the scoring criteria that we will be using in these proposals. And then just sort of wrapping up, next slide, just to bring it back all together, the Climate Smart Communities Initiative, it's a holistic public-private partnership that's promoting science-informed adaptation actions. So the initiative involves recruitment and preparation of climate service professionals to work with communities to make equitable resilience plans. We will also be recruiting communities that are ready to move into climate resilience planning and are ready to work with our team and the team and the individuals who are selected to lead them through this process. That we will be supporting practitioner cohorts both through preparation and in real time as they're supporting these communities in moving through the steps to resilience process and preparing an equitable resilience plan. That we're going to do everything we can to optimize their chances for success in obtaining the funding that they need to enact their high priority projects. And that overall, that we're sort of promoting awareness and willingness to address climate-related risks and take action to mitigate those risks through these plans, and then to share knowledge on the outcomes. Next slide, just a bit about what it's not. We're not specifically looking to choose someone who has an application or a method. This is more holistic in its approach. And so we want to make sure that people are understanding that this is sort of moving through. It's a systemic approach to scaling up on a widespread, many communities across the country, resilience planning in sort of a more systematic way. So we're not looking to pick an entity because they have a particular downscaled model or a particular tool or methodology that they're looking to innovate and test. That's not what this is about. There are other competitions and solicitations that are focused on that. This is about taking and using what's proving successful and figuring out how we can take it to scale for the reasons previously described. And then the last slides are just turning a gaze towards the future. If we're successful, the future we're envisioning is that we will have scaled up and accelerated resilience building across the nation. We will have reduced the costs per community of resilience planning, that we will have made diversity, equity, and inclusion a central element in all of those plans. Where practicable, we will have emphasized and utilized nature-based solutions. We will have engaged communities to continue working together even after they have a plan. We will have leveraged and used the steps to resilience to help communities recognize and respond to their hazards and so forth. We will have helped diverse populations across the nation engage in building resilience. Next slide. Increased adaptation workforce who uses new capacities to build resilience is key. We also consider this an investment in our nation's workforce. So I'll leave this slide on screen for a bit longer, but I'm just keeping one eye on the clock. I think I've taken a bit more time than I wanted to. So maybe we'll move now into the Q&A portion. I haven't seen any questions appear in the control panel.
I can help you find those, David.
Oh.
In the
Okay.
control panel, if you'll go to questions,
yeah,
and you can pop it out. We have 5 already.
Okay.
I can read them to you if you'd rather.
Well, you'll need to, unfortunately, because mine is blank.
No worries. Okay. The first question is from Stephanie Dalkey. She says, are there really a sufficient number of adaptation practitioners out there now, or do you expect that this training process will help convert people and firms who do similar work now, but are lacking in specific climate adaptation knowledge or experience?
I personally think it's both. I think there are quite a few experienced climate adaptation and resilience practitioners out there now who I'm hoping and thinking will want to participate as either a partner or a sub-awardee in this project. And then I think there's perhaps an even larger number of entities and individuals who could and may like to become practitioners in this space, and through the training, we can help them get there. And I'll invite my colleague Ned Gardner also to jump in and help if you'd like to add to that answer.
I think the both and is the correct approach. We do think there are people out there doing this work, and we, in the scope of work we've outlined, are looking to systematize how we work in parallel and together.
All righty. The next question comes from Subha Srivastava, who asks, could communities apply and use the funding to update their hazard mitigation plans to better address climate change effects on vulnerabilities and develop mitigation actions with adaptation co-benefits?
So this is not a program where communities, where the local governments could say, we'd like to update our climate action plan or our hazard mitigation plan, we'd like you to fund us and we'll go off and do it. That's not what this is. However, if a community has a hazard mitigation plan and they would like us to work with them in updating it, and they apply, we could fund a practitioner that we've trained is working with us to work with them to update their plan. So it's a subtle but important difference. So yes, it would be a good thing if they already have one and they want to update it. There's already a starting point. We recognize that we want to accommodate a range of communities out there. There may be some that are at square zero and are looking to just get started, and there may be other communities that have started and they're some way down the road, in which case we'll meet them where they are. So that part would be good. I just wanted to make it clear that the funding would not be going to that community, that municipal government or that tribal government. The funding would be going to the awardee and the practitioner, but we would meet them where they are and lead them from that point, if that made sense.
All right, I'm going to move on to a question by Ashish Sharma. I am not able to understand the budget. How many proposals will be funded, and what is the upper cap for each proposal?
So we will select one entity on this one project. We stated a dollar amount in the NOFO. In year one, the dollar amount was stated at $4 million. We're looking and hoping that we'll be able to scale up in subsequent years to between 10 and 15 million per year in years 2, 3, and 4. But in short, those funds would go to one entity that would lead this one project. Now, the proposing team can present themselves as co-Is where they're equal partners, or there could be one entity that then has sub-awardees, but it would be, the one award given for the one project, if that answers your question.
Okay, here's another one. This one comes from Rachel Jacobson. She said, can you elaborate on what types of communities you're envisioning being engaged in the program?
So by communities, we're envisioning it would be a municipal or a tribal or a county government entity, or possibly a local state entity, but it would be a government entity that would be working at a community level to, understand and characterize their exposure to climate-related hazards and how to build resilience at that community level on addressing the priority hazards that they identify in a way that's inclusive in that community and in a way that's representing or serving the underserved members of that community in particular. Ned, are there other key nuances in answering that question you'd like to bring out?
She may have been having in mind the fact that communities don't always have the same sense of geographic boundaries. So in a rural community, we were envisioning that a larger area might be involved, for example, or for tribal governments, there may be a logical reason to address a larger area when we consider the word community. So some of the nuances of what we mean by community are subject to ongoing conversation and the input of the applicant.
Thank you.
All right.
I hope that answered your question, Rachel.
Marie Colton asks, are there specific set-asides for the private sector partners, small businesses, for example?
No, there in this particular project, there's not a specific set-aside such as that.
Gwen Griffith asks, should an organization that is primarily interested as a co-investigator or partner role submit an LOI? Could that be used to help link that organization with potential primary awardees?
NOAA will not. I will not be playing the role of matchmaker per se. I would not be doing that. If you want to reach out to a number of entities out there, and I know that, Gwen, you know a lot of who those entities are, you could reach out and share your thoughts, your interests, your ideas and opportunities. And then also, after an award is made, there will also be an opportunity for you and everyone to signal to whoever who is awarded if there's interest in working with them as a sub-awardee. There would also be that opportunity, and there will be an application process. So you and others could signal to them that you're interested in being a part of this. If that answers your question.
And I'm going to go back. Okay. Rachel Jacobson had a clarification on her community about the types of communities. She said, my question is more about the community characteristics. Since communities won't receive funding to participate, that will automatically exclude many communities who can't afford to provide in-kind staff time. You also talked about readiness, and I'm hoping you can elaborate on that, given that many communities that have more pressing priorities are also the ones at highest climate risk.
Thank you, Rachel. I think you're bringing some important considerations into focus here. First of all, I want to acknowledge what you're saying. And I recognize the reality of what you're saying also. For example, I attended a National League of Cities meeting where I was hearing council members and other municipal government representatives speaking, where they were having local community engagements and they were wanting to talk about environmental hazards and risks and climate-related hazards and risks. And when they got around the table and the conversation was just getting started, quickly caught on to the fact that the people they had invited there didn't want to talk about those things. they wanted to talk about racial injustice, or they wanted to talk about relationships with law enforcement, or any number of other issues that in their minds, and were maybe higher priority or more urgent to them. And so that's, I understand and respect that and appreciate that. And so I think what we're looking for, so just to acknowledge that, we definitely are looking to address equity in this project. We, through our partnership with the Climate Resilience Fund, we are funding an entity that will work with us to train and to help us make sure we include equity, to have a training module focused on equity, and to find those pathways to ensuring equity and inclusiveness in the conversation and how it's conducted. And so, doing everything we can to be inclusive and to address that consideration. But we would also be looking for some signals from the communities that apply that, to understand what is their current reality, where they are in that conversation, and what how their readiness level that they consider, what do they consider to be their readiness level to begin having a climate resilience and equity conversation in their community. So I don't know if that's completely answered your question, but Ned, are there other thoughts that are coming to your mind?
We will be having a process in parallel with this, where we're looking at how do we identify communities and match them with adaptation practitioners. And so I believe that process will be one in which we address all of Rachel's concerns, and that's how we're planning to, that's the forum in which we're planning to deliberate further on this.
Alrighty, we'll keep moving since it's nearing the golden hour. Marjorie McGurk submitted a question, said, communities often tell us that they must engage with those holding regulated, credentialed licenses that carry liability. Would the trainees earn licenses?
The plan is to award, I would say, certificates of completion to the trainees. The term license to me connotes a more formal or specific document. I would say that we will be working with people who complete our training and who are certified as having satisfactorily completed our training. If there are particular implementation projects, let's say it's an infrastructure or a green infrastructure project, then the adaptation professional that we're training and providing might not necessarily be credentialed in that, and that we're imagining that a relevant and credentialed entity that specializes in that type of service could and would be brought to the table. So if it's an infrastructure or green infrastructure project, then that type of credentialed entity would be brought in that's relevant. And that's not something that would be covered under the expense of this project. That would be the thing that we would go after in folding into what's the cost of this plan and what's the cost of implementation of this plan, or helping them find other means to get that type of expertise also to the table.
All righty.
Ned, any further thoughts, Ned?
I thought that was put very well. Yes, we are not seeking to replace the professional credentials that licensed professionals hold.
All right. Another question from Marie Colton. Is there a sense that projects that include boots on the ground are a higher priority to build human capacity as well, similar to other adaptation or restoration projects at NOAA?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I lost
Yeah,
the
I'm
handle on
not
that
positive I
question.
understood that. I could perhaps unmute Marie if she was willing to answer the question, ask the question verbally.
Yeah,
Marie, help me understand your question.
yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, my question is, I had a lot of experience with the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative a number of years ago, and there was so there was a lot of funding put kind of directly into communities or into the whole region. And when the proposals came in, there was a lot of interest by the congressional appropriators that these funds really help build jobs and sort of the good environmental kind of STEM type of related jobs in a community at the same time. And so there was, kind of a very strong filter put on many of the responses about really what are you doing for the community in terms of getting people economically engaged in the environment. And that's what's driving my question. I just don't know if that's a part of this now or if it's maybe a later phase.
Well, I'll say we hope that it is. In terms of, we think inevitably that there will be positive benefits along the lines of what you're suggesting. For example, depending on the types of projects that any given community chooses to implement, obviously the execution of those are not covered under the scope of this project, and that they would need to be retaining the services of those credentialed entities that can do and deliver on those types of projects, whether we're talking about, say, shoreline restoration or infrastructure or green infrastructure or whatever it may be. And so we think that too is going to be a stimulus in terms of jobs and in terms of supporting the local economy. We think that we're making an investment in boosting the nation's workforce in this space, so it's generating more work. So we're hopeful that this kind of helps drive the whole enterprise towards a tipping point that is helping to achieve those things that you're pointing at, not least of which being a boost in literacy, environmental and climate literacy, and perhaps attracting more interest in this space. So hopefully it's helping the economy, it's helping the job market, and it's sort of moving the whole enterprise forward all at the same time. Is that getting at what you were asking?
Yeah, that, it's a lot to take off all at one time. So, but that was just kind of a cautionary note for a new program.
Okay,
Thank you, Marie. The next question is from Sasha Peterson. He asks, how do you envision other NOAA resources in addition to the Climate Resilience Toolkit being included? How does the cooperative agreement affect this collaboration or use of NOAA data and resources to support communities?
Well, we do envision that other NOAA entities, grant-funded entities, can and will participate in this. We recognize that there's considerable expertise and resources available also in, say, the RESAs, in Sea Grant, in the National Ocean Service, for example, and so forth, and that they bring also a wealth of expertise to the table. So I would say, those entities, for example, people who are already working in RESAs, they too would be eligible to participate in this project. And then as our practitioners wade into the challenges of each local community that they're working with, we're envisioning that as needed, we're going to be opening up communication channels to allow our awardee and the practitioners that are chosen to be able to reach out and draw upon that collective knowledge and wisdom to get information, to get guidance if needed, to have, call their attention to what's available and what other support exists that could help support that community or that they could use in the deliberation. So there's any number of ways that we're going to be looking to pollinate this project with those other grant funded projects. and including the ability for those other grant-funded projects to participate and receive, say, remember, there could be a RESA member who may also participate here and receive funding as a subawardee, for example, or they could compete to be the primary recipient, if that answered your question.
As a follow-up, right along that, another point from Rachel Jacobson. She said, presumably there will be more federal money and attention for programs across many agencies. Can you speak to what you know about how that space is evolving and specifically how those changes will intersect with CSCI?
Thank you, Rachel. So we're aware of, for example, FEMA's BRIC grant. There are HUD grants. There are other grants also by other agencies that are being awarded. And we're envisioning and hoping very specifically that we will be able to partner with the relevant federal program managers of those programs to make sure that we're doing everything we can to align and optimize the training for our practitioners and the resulting plans that they're co-producing with the communities, so that they're optimized and maximized for success. And we think that that's serving the community, but it's also serving, say, FEMA or HUD to be getting high quality, very focused, very effective plans or proposals submitted to them. So I think everyone wins this way. So that's one way that we're envisioning that this will be helpful.
And I'm going to go back to another topic we've hit already with two questions or comments, one by Stephanie Dahlke and the second by Gwen Griffith. Stephanie said, I had the same question as Rachel. Many of the communities that need this help the most may not have the staff capacity to engage in plan development anytime soon. To be truly equitable, there needs to be financial and/or people support for those communities to be able to engage. And Gwen said, as a follow-up about community readiness, can you consider promoting equity with direct funding for rural or tribal communities that meet a needs-based eligibility criteria?
So for the first question, I definitely want to acknowledge the reality of what was noted, that if there's an underfunded and not well-staffed, say, county or municipal government, then the question is, well, what are we expecting them necessarily to be bringing to the table? So I want to say this definitely is a project about meeting these communities where they are and going out of our way, particularly to identify and work with those communities that are disadvantaged, that are perhaps have been underserved. So this is something that we're specifically going to be looking to address, as we think through our strategy and what is our strategy for equity, to make sure we are going out of our way to accommodate and to be able to provide services, especially to those communities that may be least well able to address their climate-related hazards and so forth. So I haven't thought it entirely through, but I'm trying to signal that we remain committed to figuring that out and not just orphaning those communities that aren't well staffed or funded, but quite the reverse, but specifically seeking them and finding ways to meet them where they are. Then to Gwen's question, I'm not currently envisioning opening up a mechanism whereby we're sending dollars to those government entities, but that we're funding the awardee and the partnership, if you will, the practitioners that we're going to then be bringing to the table to work with those entities. That's how we're currently envisioning it. Although we could, we can reach out to some of our other partners in the federal family to see if there may be other ways to augment in terms of dollars going to those communities to help them in some ways, such as you've described. Ned, do you agree with that answer? Do you, or would you like to elaborate?
Absolutely. Let's call attention back to the purpose of the CSCI application itself, in which we date, we are seeking an entity to resolve a lot of these questions and state a path forward through the tricky territory that you're outlining, Rachel. And in fact, we would be pairing communities with support, and the funding would directly go to providing that support. So I believe that the NOFO, if you read it carefully, in fact, is very responsive to your concerns, but that we are seeking a cooperative agreement that would allow us to address, resolve, and widely disseminate methods for bringing forward adaptation solutions with equity at the center. So I believe we have alignment on some of the sources of problem and then addressing them together would be the goal of this successful project.
A follow-on question to that is from Sasha Peterson. He said, can you speak a little more about the community selection process? Do you see that being something the selected applicant will do or NOAA would do?
Both together. We see that the awarded applicant will manage and conduct the process, but NOAA will be certainly there at the table in terms of fine-tuning the application and the fields and the selection criteria. We will have, there will be selection criteria that are optimized to be looking for disadvantaged communities, underserved communities, and opportunities to particularly address those areas where the need may be greatest, and so forth.
Okay, we have a question from Natalie, whose last name I'm not going to attempt. It starts with a B, but she wants to know, could you explain what the resilience ecosystem is and how they fit into this competition?
So I believe there's a link in the email that Luann sent, or that I sent and Luann forwarded, that takes you to a page in the Climate Resilience Toolkit that gives a high-level overview about the resilience ecosystem. So I'll encourage you to go there for more details. You can also Google online. There have been 2 resilience ecosystem workshops with summary reports about what was discussed and what was decided and what were follow-on actions based on those. So you can get a lot more detail from those. But I'll just say at a high level, the resilience ecosystem is a recognition that there are climate adaptation and resilience practitioners in all domains of academia, commercial entities, government entities, and non-governmental entities that are working in public-private partnerships, working collaboratively and synergistically in ways that lift all boats to advance the field. And in our workshops, we identified what are needs and gaps and opportunities that are particularly important to helping to advance the field. And we have subsequently, based on those signals that we were receiving back from the larger community of adaptation practitioners, what would be small grants that we could put out in partnership with the Climate Resilience Fund that would specifically begin to address some of those needs, the most highest priority needs or gaps or opportunities. And these are out there in the open access, open source domain. So it's been an enterprise about lifting all boats. So it's not an entity. No one owns the resilience ecosystem. It's just a recognition that it's an open and inclusive community. And if you're working in this space, you're a part of the ecosystem. This Climate Smart Communities Initiative is an extension of some of the deliberations that we have had in the resilience ecosystem. We co-developed a theory of change, which you can access and review. And I think you'll find that those values and those specific strategic goals and objectives summarized in our theory of change are explicitly being addressed here now in the Climate Smart Communities Initiative.
We have 2 more questions from Allison Mize. One is, could you talk more about tribal engagement? And the other is, does this fall under the America the Beautiful plan spearheaded by CEQ?
Well, obviously, tribal engagement is also going to be is very important. We are aware of a number of tribal engagement strategies that have been developed in recent months and years. So, for example, our colleagues in the National Integrated Drought Information System have a tribal engagement strategy. Just to list one, we know there are others. So part of our thinking is that in the small grant that's being awarded by the Climate Resilience Fund, to be looking at what already exists with respect to equity and inclusion, and particularly including tribal engagements, but other engagements as well, and to help us develop and synthesize a module that will be a part of the training to help us make sure that we're keeping equity and inclusion front and center in this project. And obviously tribal engagement will be an important part of that.
And she also asked about the America the Beautiful plan.
So I think she asked, is this a part of the America the Beautiful plan? And I'll confess to not being intimately familiar with it. So I'll say it's possible there's overlap and there's synergy. We have not actively explored with them yet exactly whether or how to make this a part of that. There may be synergy that we could look at, but maybe not explicitly right now. I don't know too many details about that one yet, I confess.
Okay. One last thing. Ned is wondering if, did we think about getting maybe some building block information pulled together on the community selection through a contract earlier this year?
Yes, thank you, Ned, for calling that to our attention. So I think this is harkening back maybe to Sasha Peterson's question, which is we have funded an activity to go ahead and get started in helping us think that through in terms of what are the selection criteria for the community application process, and again, particularly with emphasis on selecting communities that might be disadvantaged or underserved, and what are all of our criteria. And the thinking is that we will obviously review and vet that before we put it into play. So that's one of a number of near-term building blocks that we have invested in that is a work in progress. Is that capturing the key points you wanted to make, Ned, or would you like to elaborate a bit more?
Yes, I heard several people asking about that selection process, and so we'll be putting forward a draft, way of moving forward on this topic, but it won't be till late this calendar year or early next calendar year.
Okay, we're getting a couple of thank yous and thinking that things were pretty informative, but I'm not seeing any other content questions right now, unless someone has entered a question and it didn't get asked. I do notice that both Allison and Marjorie have a hand up, but I think that may be residual. If you'd like to, I'll go ahead and, they've gone ahead and put them down.
Well, if there are no other questions or comments from folks, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your Friday afternoon to join us here. And these have been great questions. I'm very excited about the Climate Smart Communities Initiative. I'm excited for the field writ large of adaptation practitioners, and I'm excited to imagine what we can do, in service to our nation and in service to those communities that haven't been well served up to now. So, I look forward to receiving any questions that you may have going forward, and definitely look forward to reading some really interesting proposals, well, letters of intent and then proposals. Do reach out if you have further questions. But otherwise, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Shall we end it there, Luann, or were there any other questions to address?
I'm still looking for one hand that may be up. Not seeing it though.
Ned, any last points you wanted to make?
I think you covered the waterfront, David. I'm sure we'll be hearing from people if they do have questions, and of course they know how to find us.
Okay,
Lots of thank yous coming in. So,
thank you.
okay, and
Appreciate
we'll get
everyone's
this
time.
posted. We'll get this posted probably by Tuesday on the NOFO page.
Thanks, Luann.
You bet.
All right. Well, let's adjourn. Everyone have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.